Every AEM front-end team promises, we'll refactor this next sprint. 2 weeks later, production breaks, tickets pile up, and everyone blames the last developer. Why do refactors always fail in AEM? It's not your code, it's the structure, ownership, and scale. By the end of this video, you'll understand the three silent killers of refactors and how senior teams avoid them. Many teams believe this equation: refactor equals good code, and good code equals success. That assumption is wrong. In enterprise AEM, clean code alone doesn't fix systemic problems. Because here's the reality: CSS cascades unpredictably across pages and components. JavaScript behavior depends on markup, which authors can change. Components can be duplicated freely by non-developers. Multiple teams touch the same client libs, often without coordination. So even a well-written refactor can break production silently. If you don't understand these dependencies, a refactor isn't an improvement. It's a time bomb. Real success in AEM doesn't come from cleaner files. It comes from understanding scale, ownership, and boundaries, and designing for them intentionally. Even if your JavaScript is perfect, CSS can silently break everything. Now imagine this at scale: 120 components, 5 developers editing styles in parallel, author-driven DOM variations across pages. One team changes the CSS for margin as shown in the slide. It looks harmless. The intent is local. But because CSS is global by default, that single change affects every card on every page across multiple templates. Suddenly, spacing breaks in places no one touched. Pages look wrong, but nothing obviously failed. This is why refactors collapse in enterprise AEM. Not because the code is bad, but because CSS dependencies were never made explicit. Architect insight: refactors fail when you treat CSS as decoration instead of architecture. Until CSS is designed with boundaries, ownership, and layers, no refactor is truly safe. Many AEM projects bind JavaScript directly to the DOM, like the left side code, the fragile way. This line tells the browser, find every element on the page that has the class .cmp-carousel. Most AEM projects then loop over these elements and attach behavior, like initializing a slider or adding event listeners. Why does this look fine at first? Because on a simple page, there's usually one carousel and the DOM structure is predictable. Why does it break at scale? If an author duplicates the component, this code now runs twice. If the component is nested, the same logic may initialize the same element again. If another component uses a similar class or markup, this JS attaches where it shouldn't. Now the same JavaScript runs twice, or not at all, or affects the wrong element. Suddenly, a small refactor breaks unrelated pages. The problem isn't the selector itself. The problem is the assumption behind it, that the DOM is stable, unique, and controlled by developers. No ownership means chaos. Even with clean code and good intentions, things fall apart when ownership is unclear. Here's what that looks like in real AEM projects. No one owns global styles, so changes ripple everywhere. No one owns shared JavaScript, so logic becomes fragile and duplicated. Multiple teams touch the same client libs, often without coordination. The result? Every refactor turns into meetings, approvals, and firefighting instead of engineering work. Teams become afraid to change anything, not because it's hard, but because it's risky. And that's the real cost of missing ownership. Now that we know why refactors fail, let's see how senior teams structure their work to survive refactors. Senior teams approach refactors very differently. They don't refactor everything at once. They refactor with structure and ownership. First, they use layered CSS and JS, base tokens, layout utilities, component styles, and variants, each with a clear purpose. Second, they centralize shared logic. Common behavior lives in one place, not copied into every component. Third, they define clear ownership. Every module, every client lib, every style layer has an owner responsible for changes. And finally, they refactor at the feature level, not globally. This keeps the blast radius small. Let me explain what the right side structure actually represents. At the top, we have core. This is the foundation. Things that are shared everywhere and change very rarely. Core styles contain design tokens and layout primitives. Colors, spacing scales, typography, grids, nothing component specific lives here. When these change, the entire system changes intentionally. Core behavior is shared JavaScript logic, utilities, helpers, and patterns that multiple features rely on. Written once, owned by one team. Then we have components. These are intentionally boring. Each component contains mostly markup, no heavy logic, no global styling decisions. A button is just a button. A carousel is just structure. Finally, we have features. This is where real behavior lives. Forms, navigation, flows, things that actually represent user journeys. Features can evolve, be refactored, or even rewritten without touching core or every component. Let me give you a real refactor success scenario. In one enterprise AEM project, 80 plus components, 4 front-end teams, 2 major refactors in 6 months, and yet no broken pages in production. Why did this work? Not because of a new framework, not because of a better bundler, but because of fundamentals. Clear ownership. Every layer had an owner. Shared utilities. Logic wasn't duplicated across components. Component isolation. Markup stayed simple and predictable. Layered CSS. Changes stayed within their intended boundaries. Notice something important. No tool magically fixed anything. Structure and ownership did. That's the difference between refactors that fail and refactors that actually ship safely. This is where experience really shows. A junior developer says, we'll refactor next sprint. A senior developer says, we'll regret the current structure if we don't plan ownership first. The difference isn't confidence, it's pattern recognition. Seniors have seen how unclear ownership, leaky CSS, and shared client libs turn refactors into production incidents. That mindset shift is exactly what interviewers look for in senior AEM roles. Not just code knowledge, but architectural judgment. Now you understand why refactors feel risky in AEM. It's not because refactoring is bad. It's because structure and ownership were never designed for scale. In the next video, we'll dive into design systems in AEM, what actually works in enterprise projects, and why it's the only sustainable way to maintain consistency. Comment below. Which refactor disaster has hit your AEM project the hardest? CSS, JavaScript, or ownership? I'll see you in the next one.